how to implement discipline when starting the carnivore diet. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up. So the other day I got into a conversation with one of my clients. Eventually we start talking about different aspects of health and we start talking about how I'm doing a carnivore diet. The one thing people say is, I don't think I have the discipline to do something like that. The reality is it doesn't take a lot of discipline to do. It really doesn't. And people are like, yeah, I'm sure you're just saying that. And I'm like, no, it really doesn't take a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of discipline in the beginning when you're starting to implement the carnivore diet, but it doesn't take a lot of discipline once you're old hat at it. It only takes a few months typically for most people to get to the point where it's no effort at all. It's easy. You would rather starve than eat something that you're not supposed to eat, because you feel so good doing the carnivore diet. If you're dealing with health problems and you've been doing a carnivore diet for a long time, most of those health problems start melting away. They go into remission. And the health benefits you're getting are well worth the limited sacrifices you have to make with the food that you can't eat. And that's worth it for most people. But the reality is, some people just don't want to give up certain foods. I find mainly with women, it's their glass of wine at the end of the day. They don't want to give that up. They think that's just too much for them. And the reality is, if they're already healthy, who cares, right? If they're already healthy, then what's the big deal? Keep on doing what you're doing. If you're satisfied with your quality of life and the food that you eat, then what's the problem? Keep doing what you're doing. But for those of us who can't manage carbohydrates and we also have health problems, these things start to take over your life, and you have to start applying discipline in the beginning to manage these health problems. But after a while, it's easy. And I'm not talking like it takes a while to build up a skill and it takes a while to show discipline to get good at doing something like, say, learning how to slam dunk a basketball. That takes a lot of discipline to get to the point where you're good at it. And then after that, it still takes a lot of effort and work and maintenance to be able to do that, because you can't just learn that habit when you're 15 years old and then go and do it again when you're 50 years old. It doesn't work like that. You have to maintain certain disciplines for certain rewards and accomplishments all through your life. Otherwise, all the work you did to get to that disciplined level of whatever it is you're doing, in this case, slam dunking a basketball, eventually goes away, and you have to rebuild that discipline. You have to rebuild the muscle memory. You have to rebuild the skill. You have to rebuild the athletic shape you need to be in to jump that high and to have the coordination to do that. It's one of those things that once you get good at it, you can maintain easily. There's no real work in maintaining a carnivore diet after you've gotten rid of the bad habits and gotten rid of your sugar and carbohydrate addiction. How can you develop discipline? The last point's probably going to be the most important point, so stay tuned. Discipline and consistency go hand in hand. You have to remember, you can't have one without the other. You're not going to be able to cut out carbohydrates and sugar if you're dealing with a sugar and carbohydrate addiction, if you're still having little bits of it or fake sugar every now and then. Either way, it's not going to work that well for you. If you can manage not being 100% strict, well, then that's great. That's good for you. But lots of us can't because we're dealing with that carbohydrate addiction. So what are some ways we can develop some discipline with this? Well, I say the first thing is, are you a big picture thinker? Are you looking at this to lose weight, or are you looking at this to manage your health? If you're looking at this to manage your health with the side effect of losing weight, I think you're in a pretty good spot. If you're looking at this as a way to lose weight, as soon as you lose your weight, you may hold it for a while, you may do it for 6 months or another year, but you're going to slip because you're looking at it as just another diet, just like you've done all the other times you've ever gone on any kind of diet. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to be able to look at this as a new way of living. I want you to look at this as a way of getting rid of your health problems. And when you do that, you're going to end up in a healthier place. And the side effect is you're going to lose your weight. So it's worth it. I just want you to keep this in mind. It's really worth it to look at this with a long-term picture of your good quality of health down the road, not for weight loss. Weight loss is going to happen. Don't worry about the weight loss end of it. It's going to happen on its own. The vast majority of people, regular carnivore is a great way to go. Some people are doing some more advanced techniques trying to learn how to manage their insulin resistance, but you don't need to do that. Just stick with carnivore, eat animal products, eat till you're satiated. When you're hungry again, eat. Don't think about it. Don't worry about calories in the beginning. Don't worry about how much weight you might put on or take off in the beginning. Stop being obsessed with the scale. Focus more on inches and non-scale victories than you do the scale, because your motivation is health. If your waistline goes down but your scale goes up and that discourages you, you're in it for the weight loss. You don't want that. You want to be in it for the health. If your blood pressure is better but the scale went up 10 pounds, what's the problem? Pay attention to these non-scale victories. Another thing is to know your strengths and weaknesses. You know what I'm talking about? If going to a certain drive-through or a grocery store or going to a family dinner is going to be something that really puts you in a bad spot and you fall into the habits of eating things you're not supposed to whenever you go to the grocery store, whenever you go to one of those places, you know what? You need to break those habits. Go to a different grocery store. Something as simple as that, as going to a different grocery store is going to make a huge difference. You're not going to know the layout as well, and you're not going to associate that chocolate cake with that grocery store because you're in a different place. If going to McDonald's makes you want to get a milkshake, don't go to McDonald's. Go to a different place. Maybe order in. Break these habits. Know your strengths and weaknesses. If you find meal prep helps you get through the day so you always have food on hand, then stick with meal prep. Do more of that. I want you to find ways to make life easier on yourself as you're breaking habits so you can develop consistency and discipline. So that goes hand in hand with removing temptations. That's another large one. Keep yourself away from these areas that don't work well for you. If it means skipping out on a family dinner this one time so that you know you're not going to go there and cheat, because you always do, no matter how well you prep yourself, you always cheat when you go to mom and dad's because mom wants to make her special apple pie for you. Instead of struggling with your no with the apple pie, this one time, just don't go. People may not understand why. You don't necessarily have to go in depth and explain why. Just don't go to that event. Simple as that. Another thing is to set clear goals for yourself. You want to understand the difference between a wish and a goal is a goal has an executed plan. So an executed plan is another way of implementing your goal. So these are two separate points that we're combining together. They're interwoven. We want to make sure that you have an idea of what you're going to do throughout your day. If you need to go to work and keep food at work, do that. If you need to keep food in your car or your vehicle, do that. I recommend keeping snack food on hand. I make burger patties that I keep in a bag at work because they're easy to just go in and grab a little bit and take. If I was to bring a bowl of ground beef to work, it's a little more difficult. It's a little more cumbersome. I got more dishes to do afterwards. I want to make this as simple as possible. Keeping it simple is a great way to go. So find ways to become efficient as well. Be efficient in executing your plan so that your goals are attainable. I can't stress enough the importance of daily diligence. This is tough to do when you're going through the sugar and carbohydrate withdrawals because you feel so bad and you get overwhelming compulsions to have junk food. Respect the fact it's an overwhelming compulsion. This is the addiction that's playing with your mind right now. And you just have to give into that like a smoker does with a cigarette. I had a client the other day that said, I would get really offended if my boyfriend wouldn't have my chocolate cake that I bake because I like baking. She said, all my ex-boyfriends accuse me of getting them fat and they end up putting on weight. And she said, if I want them to try something, I don't care how strict they're trying to be with their diet, they should be able to have that little bit of cake that I make. And I said to her, who by the way was 7 months free from smoking. So you're saying if I go on a diet, there should still be exceptions, right? Like birthdays or get-togethers or having a taste of your spouse's dish that they made when it's off of your way of eating, that's okay? She's like, of course, if it's just a bite here or there. And I said, okay. So you quit smoking how long ago? And she said, 7 months ago. How would you feel if I just had the best cigarette I'd ever had and said, you just have one drag. Just have one drag. You know what? What's one drag going to do? And at that point, she got it. She was like, you know what? I didn't even look at it like that. Some people have to be disciplined and you have to keep yourself away from these bad habits. Sometimes it's the people, sometimes it's the food, sometimes it's the environment. So habits play a big part in this. You need to change your habits. Always give yourself a backup plan. I keep carnivore bars in my glove compartment. I keep bacon on hand in my fridge. I keep burger patties on hand. Those are my staples right now. And it's easy. I keep butter at work and I keep butter at home. And this is probably the most important point to make. Learn from your mistakes. You've probably made lots of mistakes along the way. And I need you to learn from these mistakes. If you keep making these same mistakes, there's a good chance you're not learning from them. So I tried negotiating with myself for a long time, years in fact, trying to manage carbohydrates before I accepted the fact that I'm just an abstainer. I can't have carbohydrates in my diet. It sucks to be that strict, but the reality is it makes my life easy in other ways. I tried moderating carbohydrates, having a little bit with each meal, a little bit each day, a little bit once a week, a little bit just on weekends, a lot just on weekends, a lot just once a day. I tried every single way you could think of many, many times over. And the reality is, after a while, I was always going back to a full-on carbohydrate diet with lots of junk food in it because I was addicted to junk food. And I had to accept the fact, eventually, I have to abstain. It was a simple, clear-cut decision when I made it. It was easy at that point. Keep in mind, I had a major heart attack in my past, major heart attack, and I was still eating junk food and I was over 400 pounds. That's what an addiction can do to you. You're making illogical choices that are not only not wise for you, they're not good for you. They're actually bad for you, and they're actually bad choices. Look at someone who had someone who's had breast cancer and is still smoking. That's an addiction right there. You have to make the conscious effort to apply discipline in your life in the beginning of this. You won't need it later on. It's smooth sailing the longer you do this. But in the beginning, you have to apply discipline, and you have to learn from your mistakes to start applying discipline, because you're going to make lots of mistakes. I hope you're doing well with carnivore. There's going to be some holidays coming up for people. I'm going to make a video on how to avoid temptation during the holidays. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate that.